Clock news here on the Talk of the Town, Talk 100.7 FM. Jason Aiello, Rocco Radwutq, Mark Wilbur in studio, along with Congresswoman Claudia Tenney, and we'll continue our conversation. So, well, we can't.
Let me get this text in here.
Yeah, let's do that.
In here, because I know the time's going to go by fast. Bob would like to know, Claudia, we're talking about the Supreme Court justices coming up and who President Trump might pick and what their concerns are. So this person wants to know, would you support overturning Roe v. Wade? The decision concerning abortion.
It's up to the Supreme Court. I mean,
I know you're not making a choice, but
it's not. Look, there's a concept called stare decisis, which means that the court tends to leave long-standing decisions alone, but they would, they do overturn long-standing decisions. The thing with Roe v. Wade is it is hard to justify it based on the Constitution, but if Roe v. Wade were overturned, it would simply go to the states, and I think you'd see, the people would already vote. I mean, New York has already got its own laws in place. It was already starting to happen. I think that's part of the criticism of Roe versus Wade. It cut off the conversation, and so now it should be something that should be done at the state level, and people say, well, we want to unify it. I think that, the Armageddon that's predicted by a lot of the pro-abortion people, I think is not really justified. I'm pro-life, so for me, I think the debate should happen, though. I don't see reason why we can't have a debate about what we're doing. And, obviously the Roe versus Wade set up a standard, the first trimester, which was, enhanced by the Casey decision. And maybe it should go to the states and let them determine what, they're supposed to be the so-called laboratories of democracy and figuring out but, we've come to a point where we're so worried about a Supreme Court decision. I think we have a lack of balance in our country. We shouldn't be so dependent on what the Supreme Court does. It should, the three branches of government should be more equal. That's what we were conceived on, and I think
don't you have an issue though if you leave a lot of these things to the states? You have what happened in the South during the Jim Crow era, where certain states, because of their particular demographic, will enact legislation which can't suppress minorities. And if it weren't for the U.S. Supreme Court coming down on things like separate, the Brown versus Board of Education.
Yeah, but that was all changed. The 14th Amendment and all these other issues covered that. That's where the legislature came in and made sure that we had equal rights and that we had.
The Supreme Court implemented it with things with the things
right.
such as the Brown versus Board of Education case, which overturned Plessy versus Ferguson from 1890.
Right, but then those laws were then changed, though, because we instituted more with the states and the federal government and the Congress came in and enacted many of these things. The civil rights legislation, thanks to the Republicans.
But they became national rather than leaving them to the states, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, Mark, are you trying to say that you're concerned that we're going to start segregating things again?
I'm concerned about
the issue is, do you leave abortion? What Claudia's saying is, if you overturn Roe versus Wade, then you leave each state has their own rules and regulations regarding abortion, right? That's what you're saying. Yeah. And I'm just asking, don't you have a risk with that you're going to have some states where you're going to have conduct which is illegal, which does suppress minorities who have a viewpoint in that state which is different from the minority, and their rights get trampled on in a sense.
Well, but then again, there are people that are pro-life that feel like millions of children have been killed because of abortion. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't. What about the rights of those people? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are founding principles.
The answer to that is don't have an abortion. I mean, nobody forces anybody to have an abortion. It's an option that they
right. Well, yeah, nobody forces anyone to have sex unless you're rape, incest, or those that forcible, and those are all exemptions. And most pro-life people accept those.
And there was I don't know if it was a court or a commission, but it was involving this man Baker, who didn't want to sell a cake to a gay couple that had gotten married. That was the Supreme Court. They didn't decide the issue in terms of whether a business can deny that type of product, making a cake to somebody based on their sexual orientation. But the issue was they felt that he didn't get a fair chance in the lower court. They felt that there was hostility toward his religious beliefs. I forgot exactly what the words that were used.
It's a First Amendment issue because it wasn't that he was objecting to serving people, same-sex couples. He was objecting to having to perform and be part of a religious ceremony that was against his religion. It was very different. Had they just denied service, at their restaurant, then that would be a civil rights issue, and then the Supreme Court, I think, would have gone in a different direction. So I think there's a big distinction there, and I think it's good that we have these conversations. I don't know if the court will even touch the Roe versus Wade decision, but I think all the hysteria over it coming from Gillibrand and a number of people, I just don't think is warranted. I don't think the law, people are going to have the right to vote on that law, and they've already spoken in many states, and I just don't think that it's going to be the end of the world. I think it's going to be considered, and it could go back to the court again, and the court may uphold parts of Roe. They may make another determination, and something that would be, dealing with science, and more people are moving in the pro-life direction because they're realizing they're seeing sonograms and that they're living beings and that things need to be considered. I think everybody gets kind of in their corner on these things. I think there's nothing wrong with us publicly debating it, and I think that's part of what's going on in our country that's sort of frustrating. I've been with a number of friends of mine, and yesterday, as I indicated, when I was trying out my Acorn Stairmaster, or whatever you call that thing, stair climber with one of my friends, she was just saying, her family is Democrat, Republican, but, she said she was a Democrat, she's a Republican now, but half her family's Democrats, and some of them are reasonable, and some of them say, if you believe in Republican principles or you support the president, not only are you a bad person, that you need to be eliminated. Like, we just have to have you out of the conversation. You have no right to speak. And I think that that's where it's unfortunate that in many cases we've gone to that, because you have a different opinion. It's not that, we respectfully disagree. You are all of a sudden a bad person for having a fairly mainstream opinion about things. So I think that's the frustration.
Sure. Congresswoman Claudia Tenney in studio with us here this morning. We have a few minutes left, and I think we're going right down the list of some of the topics I had. Immigration, justice. I'll throw one more at you. Tariffs, specifically with China. Good idea, bad idea. Will this lead into a trade war?
Yeah, there's a lot of different views on it. One of the problems that we face in our region is we've lost a lot of jobs. And a lot of the jobs have gone to Asia and China and different areas, and we want to incentivize people to bring their jobs back here. That's part of why we passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that's not getting talked about by the media with the tax cuts is that it's been bringing thousands and thousands of jobs back to the United States because the incentives are there for companies to not invest overseas. I think the priority with the tariffs is the president is trying to the real focus is getting at the intellectual property theft going on by China, the cheating that's going on with China. I think that's important. I think a lot of people are concerned about the cost of doing business here. Yeah. I think it's not. I think the president is trying to realign the balance of trade. And ideally, it's to have no tariffs on either side. And I think that's really the goal. So why is it that U.S. companies want to trade overseas and we have to be hit with tariffs when we go try to trade, and yet everybody can come to our country without having any kind of tariff? And I think we'd like to see no tariffs. Let's give the American worker the chance to prove themselves again, because we are the best. We do provide. We provide the innovation, we provide the technology that much of it is being stolen by China. So I think the goal is to realign it. I think in the process, like we were talking about in the break with Rocco, a lot of these things the president's trying to change are decades-old issues that it's hard in transition to really realign where we are.
I want to ask you this. I don't really know the answer, and I haven't heard anybody talk about it, but we have the tariff situation with Canada, Mexico, England, Germany, and China. If these trade tariff wars, so to speak, continue where we're going to raise our tariffs, so they're going to raise their tariffs on our products, we see what happened with Harley Davidson, will that affect our political alliances with those countries? Will it affect our ability to work with them politically on other issues other than trade, such as, air bases, war, potential conflict.
It's a good question. It's part of what I was going to follow.
Yeah, I don't think it has so far. But let's look at something that people are forgetting as we look at China. China is moving into a bear market, so they're seeing issues right now, and they're starting to. I think they're going to be renegotiating with us.
Which means that their economy is not.
Their economy is not as
bear market.
Their economy is less robust than it was, and they have to maintain. Because of their growing population, not to
interrupt, but it's more than just China. There's Canada.
Right, I know, but I'm getting to that, which is why I want to answer. Okay, so when you're moving China, which is really the most important, biggest player in the economic scene right now, they're a rising power. They're their economic growth. They're looking like they're going to take over and be the largest economy, not in the near future. That puts us at a disadvantage in a lot of ways. But I don't see diplomatically that, I'm not hearing that from people on our side. I mean, we have some challenges with dealing with, sometimes what's going on in the European market and some of the other parts of the